Right. So yeah, the topic, generally speaking, is job templates and potentially things touching that. So maybe I would start briefly with an overview of yeah, what an example kind of job template is. For instance, I need to find my example now. Just a second. Let's see. You might be able to see my screen.
I see a GitLab editor page, right?
Unfortunately, the recording doesn't see my screen well
Can you
either.
zoom, please?
Yeah.
It's not clear. Can you zoom, please?
Yes. Give me just.
Thank you.
Let's see. Does it? Okay. The zoom is a bit laggy, but this should be better now. I hope.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah. I think this should work for the recording as well, more or less. Um, and it keeps zooming. Nice. Uh, I assume it's big enough now. Yeah, so this is more or less a an arbitrary example. So I assume most people here have a basic idea of how the jump templates work, but just to make sure, this is an example where we have defaults defined with different architectures, with defaults for priorities, machines, and settings, which get used in the job templates. We have some examples of product definitions, which yeah, define the products to be used. These don't necessarily define the products in that sense, but what's to be used in the context of this group.
I have got a question in this direction. What is the
Yes.
difference between online and full in the case of SLE? You have got defined tests for SLE for online, and I believe the other one is full.
Online and full.
Yes, you can see SLE 15, SP3 full, blah blah blah, and SLE 15, SP3 online.
Oh, you mean right. You mean the flavor.
Yes.
It's defined here. I would say that's technically out of scope, since I wasn't planning on discussing the ISOs in that sense, but more so the definition of it. So well, I'd put it this way: in this context, the flavor is um, something like DVD as well, right? Like that's just the type of image we're using here.
Ah, okay.
So this is these are not, maybe that wasn't the best example to start with. So these are not necessarily something that's defined in the YAML. These are not keywords. These are just the names of the flavors used. And the so the I think you should be able to see the selection as well. This bit, this is basically this is how you build the name of the image that you're using. Um, and the same as the version, for instance. Like this, none of this is specifically. OpenQA doesn't really care what you use there, right? Like this could be called future. This could be an actual version that's to be used. And same for the distri. So, for instance, these are also completely different in Fedora tests. So they have completely different values for all of these ones.
Okay.
Do we actually have any special values here? Yeah, I don't think there's any particular keywords that are being used here. I am thinking if we have another example. So maybe a counter example. All right, give me a sec to see why this is not opening. Sorry about that. See, all right, this. Right. Yeah. So this is an example of the actual test suites being used here, or I should say, in this context, these are scenarios, right? And I'm saying specifically scenarios here, in case that's not clear. Scenario is what you actually run in the end, because again, the job templates right now, they don't try to define test suites. They don't define tests even. But in the YAML here, you define the scenario that you want to run, where the scenario is a specific test suite being used, with specific settings on an architecture with a product. All of that, right? So all of these definitions end up being a scenario that's to be run here, if that makes sense. So let's see, is there? Yeah, let's just take a random example here. So this is one of the scenarios. It doesn't actually use a test suite, which I think is a good example here. So in the past, we would always have test suites defined in the database, and what I'm seeing, and I think is what we want to go further with, is using not relying on what's defined in the database, but actually defining things in this scenario context. So this is also why the description is part of it. So if, for instance, if you look at the web UI of openQA and you look up test suites here, you won't find this in it, right? This is purely defined on the YAML side on this bit. And this bit, I don't know if everyone is familiar with referencing things in YAML. So I will also mention that, because I think that's a great feature that we have. As we go to the, oh wait, this lab market actually, is it not actually defined here? Okay, maybe that's not the best example then. Let me see. Okay, let me double check if this is actually.
Yeah, if it helps, because basically that's what we did in our team. We have split the resulting YAML into multiple files, so the references are used then in the architecture-specific part. So you can.
You're actually using them
Yeah.
across multiple files. Okay, that's an
Yes.
interesting. That is an interesting example, actually. Okay, let me.
Yeah, and guys, I want to say you're all very welcome to share your ideas, because just the same as I do, we don't really know how the complete flexibility is used in all the different use cases, and where this is where the flexibility of using the YAML document comes in. That basically you can edit the documents directly on the UI as is, or you can have any kind of generation of this document. So you can concatenate multiple documents. You can have some kind of templating language used from which you generated the resulting YAML document. So if you have any of these experiences you would like to share, you're all welcome to do that here.
Yeah, so there's also something that I try to do. I try to kind of have a peek and see what what use cases are you come up with, basically, and then find, for instance, that you do actually a lot more fancy things with those references than I was expecting. So I think that's a great thing, personally. So this is what I was looking for. So I think this would be on CI. There might be a script somewhere assembling the separate YAML files, right, Rodion?
Yeah. So I mean, like, I can briefly explain what we tried to solve with this approach, because I guess this problem not every team faces right now, but in our job group we have now more than 300 scenarios. So the YAML, the job group YAML as a single file is enormous, and it's hard to find. So sometimes when we need to edit the setting for the same test you'd enable for multiple architectures, we might miss one machine only because there are too many occurrences of it. So with splitting these files and using the references, it allowed us to be more granular in changes, and that they're more visible. So in case we notice that some of the files were not even touched, we then say, okay, like, we actually have it enabled on this architecture, but you didn't introduce any changes to this file. Therefore, we can immediately notice that something is missing. Which then introduce the overhead of then sewing all those files together, generating the resulting file, and then doing the deployment.
I see one correction from Tina in the chat. I should probably use the term aliases. Of course, Tina, feel free to speak up and fix my terminology if I'm misusing it. Tina is a lot more qualified with YAML knowledge than I am. I have more of a pragmatic angle on that, probably. Or maybe Tina has no sound.
Oh, sorry, I didn't expect that. I just wanted to say that these things are called aliases and anchors. So you might find actually more if you search for these terms. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, so just to double check. So there's this bit here, right? Which kind of allows you to reuse an existing definition. Is this formally the alias that is being used here?
Yeah.
Okay. And so the anchor is basically the bit with the ampersand in front, right? That is defining the bit to be reused.
Yeah.
I think this, this file is pretty much using the ones from the default YAML.
Uh,
Okay.
So like the crypto LVM in the middle of the screen, where does that look for the actual stuff to put in? Like when these references and anchors, where do they look for stuff for the content?
This bit.
I mean, the thing is that you're allowed to use the aliases in the single file only, so you cannot actually distribute them into multiple files. So the trick we do is that we store them in separate files, but we generate them to appear as a single file. Then we actually export it, and the exported file won't contain the aliases. I actually don't know. Maybe you can tell me, Christian, if now the job group supports the aliases natively. Because previously, we had to expand them before deploying the job group.
So it's still not possible to use defined test suits here with multiple job groups.
No, that's the issue. This approach doesn't solve.
So to clarify, the support for aliases is in openQA. So this syntax used here should be fine if you use it anywhere in YAML in a job group. But the remaining drawback is that you can only use it in one specific file that's used for the whole job group. So you have to have something that most likely is running in GitLab CI in practice. I think that's what most people are using or testing out still to use to post the YAML from Git, and in this case actually use multiple files after processing it. So this is something that openQA doesn't really support yet. But this is something where I'd be really interested to see. So if more people want to use YAML from different files, maybe we can find an approach that works for more people without writing custom scripts. Anton, go ahead, please.
So in the maintenance job groups, we have the problem that first of all, there are many people, many teams editing the job groups, like the SAP team, the core team, perhaps the kernel group too. So we have to keep things simple, and also the test suit must be repeated. Well, they are repeated in multiple versions. So, for example, if you go, can I share my screen?
Sure. Should be fine.
Just for clarification, when talking about it, when you say test suite, I'm not sure.
I think
which ones you mean?
Means scenarios in this case.
Yes, scenarios. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So right, because we have a table with test suits, and that can be reused among all job groups, so there's nothing to repeat. Of course, if you talk about defining the scenarios in place, like within the same YAML document within one job group, then what you would need to then you can define it once. That is really meant for the idea that take simple examples like the openQA job group that we have on
openQA. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That should be good, yeah. So, for example, on openQA OpenSUSE org, we have a job group which is called OBS or openQA, job group that we use for openQA, and it's really simple. It consists of 3 scenarios. And for these 3 scenarios, we only need that within that one job group, and other job groups wouldn't benefit from that. This is why we introduced that idea of in-place scenario definitions. And nobody, because the test suites are shared for a whole instance, and nobody else needs to understand what is this openQA scenario for. Can I run it for my tumbleweed test or something like this? Because they're not meant for that. Right?
So
if you want to reuse it, you should be using test suites, or you should find a way to say, you handle it in any Git repository, and you concatenate the files. But yeah, explain it from your point of view.
So here we have the QU job group that's shared among a lot of people. Like this is, as I showed before, the sub people. They use inline definitions, and from what I can see, they copy them because they are mainly using inline definitions in general. They copy them across job groups. So this is the QU for SLE15 SP2, and this is the QU for 15 SP1, and it doesn't look, and there's lots apparently copying happening from what I can understand.
I guess you're not using defaults much, from what I see. So there's a lot of specific settings being copied as well. Like this is kind of no fancy stuff there, I guess.
Yes, we have the classical easy stuff that's been reused and uses the scenario with test suites and machines and stuff like that. So we have a mixed use case. And we also have the problem that not only are many people editing the job groups, there are lots of this is a test suite that only one group is editing, but there are, in this file, there are a lot of testing, like rate 1 and rate 0. Those belong to the whole group. Basically, everybody's using them. So you can't put them in a single CI. I can't claim them. I can only claim the QAM and MIU. They're not in this file, I think.
By
So
claim, you mean that they are reused elsewhere?
yes, no, that I can put them in a CI.
Okay, maybe I'm not sure what you mean by claim. Maybe you can rephrase it.
No, so this job group, you can only edit it here.
Mm-hmm.
In the GitLab USD, and I post to the OSD with the CI. I can't say that, I can't tell anybody that I can edit rate 1, the rate 1 test suite only in this CI. In this CI, I would like that there would be something on OSD, like with the needles or something. Like version control there.
So when you say edit, do you mean adding settings here?
Well, the test suite has some settings on its own.
Mm-hmm.
It's there, like it's an entity that we have to use and reuse in the database.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Shouldn't that also have some version control, so that we know what is going on there?
Oh right, I see your point. Yeah, you're kind of, yeah, it's a moving target in that sense.
You can save the test suites also in an exported document, and
Sure.
then use the API to.
Yes, that's our plan, and that's
Yes.
what we can do with QAM stuff,
Yes.
because nobody else is editing them. but the problem I'm describing is more social than technological. So I can't tell everybody, okay, now I'm going to. This is where the RAID 0 is going to be added. My version will be the authoritative. Every time at midnight, I'm gonna force up OSD to use this version that's in this repo. Everybody else, do whatever you want.
I think Michael wanted to say something.
Yeah, thanks. Just wanted to mention that these topics about putting stuff into version control and handling YAML is what I mostly worked on at SAP in the last years. So I just wanted to put just a few links of ideas of tools that handles very complicated way to merge YAML, multiple files, and do expressions into that, putting variables into YAML, doing whatever magic you'd like to do. And of course, there are drawbacks that YAML gets closer to become a very complex programming language. So at some point, you reach a level that you want to go back to a single big file where you have everything, because you don't know where settings are coming from. So you have to find, let's say, some middle point between these two ways. But I also like a lot the topic mentioned by Anton about having everything in version control. So test suits, medium types, everything which is set in the machine. It's difficult to handle because you don't know who changed what, when, why. So everything in version control would help a lot. And I think there are a couple of ways. Either every team squad handles that its own way, like it's kind of starting like we have our tests, our job groups in a Git repo, but maybe also would be nice to have a Git repo for every openQA instance, like the OSD Git repo, where every team puts his own job groups, test suites, schedules in his own directory in this repository, and then we have another repository with a code that, let's say, deploys the settings to the instance. This means that the repo with the code, that it's just maybe a script that uploads the jobs group, test suite, and so on to the machine, can be reused for the OpenSUSE one, for the OSD, for whatever other instance we have as maybe to test stuff. And then every machine has its own repo for configuration. And this way, also openQA reviewer can see what happens into that test all the time and see a diff and so on. But yeah, the merging YAML file, it's a complex topic, and yeah, I don't think there is an easy solution for that, but there are ways to improve it.
And I see Anton is already showing off something that I was also asking about a while ago, because I find this quite interesting. And maybe Anton, maybe you want to say a couple things about this use case. What are these nice JSON files about?
So it's what Oliver said. OpenQA gives us the possibility to edit it with its API. What I did is got the I got all the I read our job groups. Sorry, GitLab is not meant to be used all that zoomed out. Anyway, I read all our job groups, and I I read what's defined inline there and what uses test suits, and from those I got the test suits and I separated them in the QEM folder, which we can actually do whatever you want with, and the common folder, and which we just keep it there in version control and not change it. And with the intention that if somebody wants to edit the test suits, in that it should not be done in the database, it should be done here, so that there is a record of the changes, and it should then be posted in the with the CI.
So the files in the QM folder are basically what you have in the database normally, right?
Yes, everything is right now. Everything is in the mirror of the database, and the intention is for the database to just be the dumping ground, to not be the authoritative place, and to know, just like with the job books, nothing to be edited by the web UI. What we have with the job groups extended to everything in the database, because the database doesn't have version control or versioning or whatever.
What's contained in the common folder?
In the common, it's what I said before, like, sorry, Firefox is slow with GitLab right now.
So common, I guess, means non-QEM
No,
specific?
yes.
Okay.
Those are just downloaded and not edited. We just keep them, just so we know when things change.
Right, okay.
And I know that like what I said before, the needles are version controlled. If I add a needle, it says done by the openQA web UI on behalf of ABAPAS or something like that. Ideally, this should be done. Also, the test suite or the common thing should also be done this way.
Yeah, I guess purely technically speaking, the needles are a little bit different because the way they are edited and pulled works a bit different. Yeah, but probably the part that you care about is the fact that it's all in Git at one point or another.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It ends up in openQA from exactly what's defined in Git. There's no other place where it could be coming from.
There are basically two different approaches. One approach is what you have described and what we can see with the job templates is where we have external to OpenQA some documents, and we do have that editor within OpenQA, but in this case you actually would only use it as a secondary mean to check what had been done, because the main authoritative information is within the external Git repo. For needles, we also support both ways in parallel, but what is more commonly used is, I can see that only seldomly there are merge requests for the needle repo, which could be there, of course, more often, yeah. So people can review, but of course it's a bit tedious to create these, because it's so streamlined, included what the needle editor can do within OpenQA, and providing a direct interface to the version control system. In principle, I would say we have in our plan to support still both ways, to use some kind of internal editor within OpenQA and push that to a version control system, as well as reading something from the outside. Of course, it makes sense to separate that and mark documents clearly as don't touch here, or they are only read-only in one way because they are overwritten automatically by the other way. I think we kind of manage that for the job templates sufficiently. other openQA instances also use something like complete test suite or machine definitions and all the complete product templates since years already in Git. For example, Fedora, they don't change the test suites over the web UI. They use the exported documents and updates that over the IP. So that is possible. What no one is taking away from you, I mean, I don't think there's a real technical solution for the challenge to decide what group do you want to interact with, what group of people. There's always some kind of necessary coordination with whoever you want to share code with. If you use, I mean, the two extremes are, one extreme would be everyone working together, then of course you would at the end need one way or another one source, like one Git repository where you can all see what is changing. And the alternative would be to say one openQA instance for every team, and of course you can have a single Git repository for each instance, and then you wouldn't have problems to coordinate who's changing test suites and such.
One brief note, and those who are not familiar with what Fedora is using. Fedora is currently using a custom format. They have a little script that loads things from JSON, and in a sense, without going into details, maybe similar to what Anton is showing here, trying to solve a similar problem with a slightly different approach. So I think there might be interesting to see if actually those different use cases could be converged eventually. But I saw a hand from Rodion, so please, Rodion, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Also, one point for the use case, we still have the kind of an issue with the description of the test suite, in a way that we have right now we have like 3 places where those descriptions are stored. Unfortunately, the openQA doesn't support the markdown fully, so it's not used. Ideally, we would like to have some centralized place where it can be stored in a way that you can generate the test reports automatically using those. So in case we aim for having the centralized place, because what Anton has shown looks very promising, and basically then the technical solution is already there to move to Git for the test suite definitions. But it would be also nice to get the second part of having the descriptions there, which we can then reuse in generating some documentation, like the test plans, for instance.
Yeah,
yes.
So I think the trick of it might be, if for instance if we do this on the Git side, this could be something where, for example, you end up using folders in Git, you end up using subrepo or things like that. To do the equivalent in the web editor might not be that obvious, depending on which direction we're going. So I don't necessarily know if people would really prefer to be able to have that integration long term. Going from Git might keep things a bit more flexible in that sense. Anton, go ahead.
I was so. First of all, about what Oliver was saying about the two approaches, I don't have any preference, but I'd prefer that one approach would be chosen as like the single one, so that we don't have to coordinate every time. And also, something about what you said, Chris, perhaps if we are all moving to Git, the web editor should be changed to a web viewer.
Maybe. I think nobody needs to decide right now. I mean, one of the goals is clear to say the test suits, what they define, are version controlled, and this version control is available to you as a test maintainer, right?
Yes.
And if we use what we use as editor is not decided. It could be that we say we can only really support that if we load that from the outside, so that you would have a document on Git like together with the test module definitions, where we already have YAML files for the specific test schedule. And whatever we do in the web UI is just viewing the result. It could be the other way around, that we say, similar as for the job group YAML templates, we want to have the editor and what you save then could be stored in the Git repository, or it could be like we do for needles, that we actually achieve to have a way that you can interact with the same Git repository but from two different entry paths.
Yes, I'm just saying, like, perhaps like the Git approach, the external approach, would be easier for the less things to implement.
It would be probably easier to implement, but it would be breaking what is currently done, because currently, let's say one is used that over the web UI you can edit the test suits, and in that way that wouldn't be possible anymore. Of course, we can do the same approach as for job templates, to say, well, you can do it there, and if you change it from then on, if you choose explicitly, then it would only be supported to store it in the external Git.
So maybe I can pose a question to the audience in general here. So my observation is, I mentioned this earlier, I see people either proposing to or already using Git to manage job templates, and I think there's even a couple branches in the pipeline that do similar things where these are being tested out. But do we actually have people in the audience who really like using the web UI and use it a lot and want to keep using it? Because I'm not
No.
I need that in the community, because I need approvals for every GitHub project instead of that.
Yeah, sorry, Sarah, but your special need approval for every Git repo is not really the use case.
But that is a big problem.
I know, but I think we can find better solutions for that than technical solutions.
Using the user interface is the last possible way for me.
Okay. So we will know how we need to call that last resort web UI editor then.
One remark here. What could be important are personal instances of openQA devs, which do not want to get the whole stuff there as well. For testing purposes, sometimes it's useful to have still the old web UI, where you can just conveniently dump stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, but importing stuff in there would be just grabbing it from Git would be, in my opinion, nicer, since bootstrapping a fresh instance is always run the bootstrap script, grab everything from OSD or O3, and if you could just get it from Git, I think that would be roughly comparable. At least I'd like to have stuff in Git.
Also, Felix, I assume that you'd prefer to edit them in your editor, and this way you can just edit them in your editor of choice and do a put request to your local instance, and it's there.
Yeah, okay.
I see one hand from Sergio first.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, this is regarding to Sarah that needs approval. Do you need approval for internal Git repositories, or do you also need approval for a repository that will be hosted in GitHub? that is public, because it will only offer the openqa.opensource.org YAML file.
Sergio Sara is an IBM employee, so when you talk about SUSE internal repos, then this would be possible. Or do you think like something like company internal repositories for every single company?
So my question is she also needs approval for GitHub repository?
Yes.
We have got special rules at IBM that every open source developer needs approvals from legal and the manager to contribute, and that for every single repository. So
You should switch to Red Hat or to us.
Yes, and I am great, and we have got 2 lawyers for that, and we have many developers, so you have to wait months for approvals. And the second way with SSH is not possible, because our program managers for Linux and C are saying I would need a SUSE NDA if I want to access any network with VPN. So this way does not work too. So I need the user interface, or I have to wait for approvals.
Okay. I still consider that a special case. If you don't mind.
That is shit at the moment. Sorry.
Right. Okay. Something else. So, as a reminder, I would like to say that in general, it's already like it was always possible to store all the test definitions in version control and load it from version control. Some instances, like the Fedora instance, is using that. I think historically the openQA openSUSE.org instance and the openQA SUSE instance was also using that, but then with the
So by that you mean using load templates as a scripted approach?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And with the web UI, someone implemented a way to directly interface with the database. Yeah. So that it wouldn't be easy anymore to use the same documents. I don't know what the decision was at the time. It was like, I don't know, 7 years ago or so, I assume. The plan. So, as a reminder, it is possible to store everything in Git. That's one way. However, we do have plans to go on. And we have some issues planned for that, and let me for that show you. Because it's okay if I can share.
Yep. I say go ahead.
Right. So I think I can share this Chromium. Oops, sorry. This Chrome tab, right. Okay. I'm going to the QA project just in case anyone doesn't know how to find like the complete backlog of the SUSE QA tools team. You can find it here on the wiki. If you use SUSE QA as an entry point on the overview page, it's also linked there. I saw that, I think Timo lately linked that also on some QE core overview page. So here we have how we work on, how we work, and there we have a link to the complete backlog. The complete backlog has about 100 tickets, so I would like to start with the top level view, and these has only 4 sagas, and all the relevant feature requests on the level of user stories are linked from here. There's one saga, which is the one relevant to the topic that we discussed today, which is full version control awareness within openQA. For example, user forks and branches, fully version test schedules, and configuration settings. And there's one story in there. But there are multiple stories and multiple use cases for what is already possible. For example, trigger openQA tests in pull requests. And then there's one specific proof of concept that I would like to mention, which is this one, which is complete test definition from a YAML schedule file in local test distribution folder. So the idea there is to say, don't think necessarily about SLE or OpenSUSE test now, but think about any random new product that you want to come up. Let's say Rancher UI, and you want to come up with some openQA tests for that, and you don't want to mess with what is already there with test suites and any external repository or what you need to store in the database of openQA. The idea here is really that you have one Git repository. Yeah. Think about it from a start. It can be really easy and clean. So you start with one Git repository because you can always split it later. And you have the complete test definition in a schedule, for example, in YAML format, within that Git repository. This is also where we have the test modules. This is where you have these YAML files for the individual test schedules. And this is where you want to have the, linking the scenarios together. And maybe the test suite definitions as a collection of test variables. So then you have one Git repository, and you link openQA to that one Git repository, and then openQA can load all the test definitions from that. This is the idea of this Spike solution. It's a proof of concept that we planned there. And based on that, then we can look into linking into the existing features, as we discussed, like saving the test suites in version control and such. So yeah, that's the plan, and this is where we want to go on further in this direction. Questions or comments regarding that?
Oli, it's Oli. I think it's a good idea. I'm not happy with current situation, so and we do a different way. So, but nevertheless, I think this is a good way. Could be unify stuff, and to me that should be easy and clear. And I have problems with my recent template in the job group, and at least the web UI development, for example, should be possible. Just make a try. I just want to figure out how this work, and some is it still possible if we remove the web UI for creating editing job template in specific job groups, at least for development, for example?
Yeah, exactly. This so I said in the beginning that these are options, and I'm not likely making a decision to remove any web UI editor. Okay, so same as for Needles is a good example where it works for both ways. You can use the web UI, but you can also commit Needles from the outside. For example, you can use the web UI on a local instance, and then you create a merge request for Needles, and this is somewhat missing for the other cases. So it's still to be decided what we need to remove, if anything, is to be removed at all.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I think there's been a suggestion at one point, for instance. So the situation you might find yourself in is if you set up CI to push things from Git, it doesn't stop you from using the web UI, right? So the use case that Felix mentioned, you may just want to tweak things, fiddle with it, try something out, and you can still push the proper version from Git in that case. maybe you want something more formal there, where, for instance, the web UI would actually tell you, don't do that. We don't want it for this job group, for example. In that sense, right now, it's just very open. It's not very restrictive. And I see some comments about the why, the who, the when, and the what. And I think that's a very good point as well. If you use the web UI, and the same can be an issues with needles as well, you may not have complete authorship of the things you're editing there. So this is probably a massive advantage of using Git. So if we integrated that in the editor, we would need some kind of link between, for instance, the Git user and the web UI user. I'm not sure that we actually have that kind of facility at the moment.
Yeah, well, I think normally it's good enough what we have in the history of needles. So how does it actually work that the needles Git repo knows the username?
Well, as far as I'm aware, it doesn't have any idea who you are on the Git side of things. At best, it has your email address, if that matches.
It could be. Yeah, it could be, but normally it just works, and I'm not exactly sure.
So this is also a case, I don't know necessarily if this actually works very well on different types of setups, where, if you don't happen to use the same email address for everything.
Maybe it works. So, but anyway, this already brings me to one idea, and I think this is also motivating for some members of the SUSE QE tools team to look into some smaller, limited web UI changes. So we don't always have to have this hard backend in the guts tasks, which would be to have an optional text field in the needle editor to put into the Git commits details. And just
commit message?
Yes, exactly. Okay. So right now in the needle repository, which I mentioned as one good example, where we already combine, being able to work with the external Git repo as well as using an internal editor, and maybe it's actually only that missing part of providing optional details in a Git commit message. Because what we have right now is, if you would take a look at something like this, yeah. So this is the OpenSUSE Needles repo. You see that someone like a person plus openQA Web UI committed something. So we already know who did that. We know when that was done. We know what is included. We are just missing the optional reasoning that someone is describing, unless it's covered in the needle name. Why did someone do that?
Yeah, I think this is something. If, for instance, if we add something like that to needle editing, that's something we probably want with the web UI as well, right? Like, assuming you want a more or less unified way going forward. Say you make changes in the editor to edit the YAML, and you type something like added settings for UEFI boot or something like that as a random example, and then it commits that with the according message, and you would have the equivalent with a needle where you're saying, check that the UEFI boot actually shows up or something like that. I think it would be nice to have maybe a general idea what kind of UX we want for these things, since we probably want the same eventually. Or at least, for simplicity, I'm assuming we want similar concepts for these web UI related things.
Yeah, well, of course. Okay, I think time has passed. We should end the official part here. If anyone is still interested, I will still be in the room. We can cover some more questions, but let's not extend the official part too much.
I'm sorry, have the weekly meeting, so have to go.
Yeah, this is why we wanted to officially end it here. I'm just saying that if anyone has a need, I will still be here afterwards.
So thank you everyone for attending.
Guys, another announcement. I'm right now on a regression on Docker on Leap 15 SP2 only. So if anyone has Docker instances running on there, I would wait a little bit with the update because all of them are crushing.